Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for around about the next 60 minutes. This is our Sage Business Cloud Accounting webinar. It's the advanced session. It's session number 2 in our series of Fast Start webinars that we run. If you haven't had a chance to attend the introductory session, maybe you're just starting out and you think you'd find that one useful, then please get yourself signed up for that one as well. You will receive a follow-up email after the webinar this morning. So you get that around about an hour after the webinar ends, and that will include a link to the registration page. So if you do want to get yourself signed up for a live session, or maybe just watch recordings of the sessions for a bit of a recap, then just watch out for that one. We'll explain what's covered in that webinar a little bit later on in the session this morning. Now, during the session this morning, you will be in listen-only mode. Just means if you have enabled a microphone, which I think it's enabled automatically on these types of sessions, then you will be muted. You'll be muted automatically, and you'll find you can't unmute yourself. So any questions for me this morning, please just type them into the questions panel. You should find that via the toolbar down the right-hand side of the screen. Just give it a click. You should then have a questions panel. And just any comments or questions you have, pop them in there. I'll try my best to pick those up for you. If we have a look at what we're covering in the session this morning. So we're going to start with bank feeds. Very popular feature, that one. We'll also pick up on bank rules as well. We'll then look at the process of manually reconciling your bank. So we'll just run through that process, give you an idea of the steps involved. We'll pick up on analysis types, also correcting transactions as we all make mistakes. Reporting, give you an idea of what's available. And then finally, we're going to pick up on the VAT return today and obviously touch on making tax digital as well. Many of you might still be new to accounting software because of making tax digital. Either you've just become VAT registered, or maybe you've just been having a little bit go of different accounting software, and maybe you've come around to Sage Business Cloud at this point. So we'll pick up on a little bit about making tax digital and what your responsibilities are under making tax digital as well. So that's what we're covering. Any other areas? Obviously, just keep your questions coming, and maybe I'll pick those up if we've got time in the questions section that we have at the end of the session. So we'll be hanging around for any questions that we might not have been able to answer during the session this morning. But let's get started with bank feeds. Now, bank feeds, ever since it was introduced, has, as we mentioned a moment ago, is a very popular feature. Not just for Sage Business Cloud Accounting, but throughout the Sage accounting software range. And the idea of using a bank feed is that it's a way of integrating your bank account or your maybe your credit card with your accounting software, so that it can pull your transactions down from your bank account directly into your software. So it'll pull it into this incoming bank transaction screen, which we'll see live in a moment. I'll demonstrate this one for you. And then you will process your bank transactions from within that screen. So it's estimated by processing your transactions in this way that it can reduce the time that you spend on manually inputting your transaction by up to 80%. So it's a really popular feature because it's such a good time saver. So if your normal sort of process first thing in the morning is to maybe log on to your online banking, check your balance, update your accounts, make sure it correlates to, your whatever information is in your accounts correlates to what's on your bank, then this can be, as I say, it can be a big time saver for you. Now, there are many banks and credit cards supported. We'll touch on that in just a moment. And you can connect to it if you've got a bank feed available in just a few clicks. Again, we'll touch on that. You can set up rules as well, so as transactions do download, based on the rules that you've set up, if the software can then recognize that transaction, then it can process it automatically for you, saving you even more time. So you hardly even need to get involved other than setting up the rule in the first instance. And as you'd expect, integration is fast and simple, and of course, it's completely secure as well. So I'll share my screen and we'll get stuck into a bit of a demonstration. So we're going to pop into the banking area this morning. And when you first come in, you'll have obviously panels for your various banks that you've got set up. So an account that does have a bank feed set up will be indicated like this, where you've got a certain number indicating you've got that many transactions sat there waiting to be processed. Whereas an account that doesn't have a bank feed set up will say Connect Bank, and that's how you would launch the connection wizard. Now, just before we have a look at that connection wizard, just want to quickly mention, if you need to check whether you have a bank feed available, then just click Help at the top, and you can search for bank feeds. So just click into the box, search for bank feeds. It'll do a quick search of the help, and then it will come back and give you a list of the areas that contain that. So if we just click into what are bank feeds, and in this section here, does my bank support bank feeds? There's a link here. So if we click that, I'm on the wrong one. So if we click it, we can see if our bank is supported. There's a few different options on our website, within the help center, etc. It'll give you an idea if your bank is supported or your credit card. So do check that out before you start learning lots about bank feeds, just to make sure that your bank does provide you with a bank feed. Now, as far as setting up your bank feed is concerned, really simple process, just a case of clicking your link on the panel for the bank account where you want to set up your bank feed. So we just click Connect Bank. It'll bring up this a list of bank accounts. So you can either choose one from the list, or if yours isn't listed, you can just type in the name of your bank. But otherwise, you just click your bank. It'll ask you what type of account it is you're wanting to connect to. And then as you continue through, it'll just ask you a series of security questions, enabling you then to connect to your bank feed. So it's just a case of following that wizard through, and then you'll have that feed available to you. Now, when you've got a bank feed, you'll get this option in the bottom right-hand corner once you are connected. So initially it's going to say 0 transactions, but as it connects and it starts downloading transactions, it will tell you how many transactions it's downloaded and are sat there waiting to be processed. And to access that screen, you just click that little link, and it will take you into this incoming bank transaction screen. So as you can see, we've got 242 transactions in my case on this dummy bank account that I use for the demos. We've got 242 transactions sat there waiting to be processed. Now, the transaction information that downloads from your bank or your credit card is this information in the left-hand column. So we've got the date of the transaction, we've got the reference of the transaction, and we've got the value of the transaction as well. Now, transactions appearing in black as a positive value, that's money coming into your bank. And transactions, we scroll down, we've got one here, appearing in red as a negative, that's money going out of your bank. And literally, it's a case of just working through these transactions and processing them. Now, you've essentially got 4 options. The first one is using that cross. Now, the cross will give you the option to discard the transaction. Now, this is often used when you first start using a bank feed. Maybe you've got that bit of an overlap where you've been reconciling your transactions manually so far, and then you set up your bank feed and you might think, well, it's downloaded a transaction and I've already sort of processed that one and I've reconciled it. So you get an option to discard. So that's when you're most likely to use that one. So you're just clicking on the cross, click yes to say, yes, I'm sure I want to discard it, and it'll remove it from the list. And obviously, maybe when you're first setting up, you've got that transition where you might have a few of those. Other than that, you've got 3 options when it comes to processing your transactions. You've got a match option, create option, and a transfer. So you'll get all 3 options for each transaction that's listed. Now, for this £75 coming in, what we'll do is we'll click match. When we click match, it gives us an option to choose the transactions that we want to allocate this against. So we've got £75 coming in. And all we do is we look for the transactions that this actually relates to. Now in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose this transaction here. It's an invoice against this A1 Design Services account. And it would just be a case of you going down, making your selection. Now, it might just be one transaction you choose. It might be more. So it's saying this transaction here, for instance, we might have received, just check the value again, £75. We might have received that £75 as a part payment against this invoice. But again, that receipt that's coming into our bank, it may cover a number of invoices. If it's for a number of invoices, we would just make our selection. When you select transactions, they'll be added into this box here. So if we just actually select another one, you'll see it gets added. Let's just knock that one back out. Now in this instance, we're going to say our customers paid us direct. So we're going to say, right, they've just transferred it in. So we'll choose the method of electronic. And what we want to do is we want to adjust this payment value. So they've only part paid us in this instance. So we've actually received £75. So we just adjust that payment column against this transaction. So we can see £200 outstanding. And then if we're happy with that, we can click match. Now that would actually post a customer receipt against that specific customer record into our accounts. And as you can also see, if we scroll back up to the top, that transaction disappears from the list. So that's that first one done. And again, really, it's just a case of working through your transactions. Now, the different scenarios of matching, creating, transfer, they're all covered within the Help Center. But let's have a look at creating a transaction. So let's just pick on this one. We'll not pick that one. We'll use this one. So it's got a reference 85263, which you can see for any transaction, it transfers that reference across to the reference field. Now, what we're going to say for this one is, let's say we bought a PC. We haven't been invoiced for that. We've just purchased that one. We've made a bank payment. Essentially, we paid on our, let's say we paid on our credit card, or in this case, sorry, or via our current account. Sorry. So we're going to choose create. It's in a case of filling in the details. So the reference is already completed for us. It just transfers whatever's in here, just transfers that across for us. The method, we're going to leave it set to debit card. We then choose what the payment in this case was for. Now I could just start typing in. So we'll say office equipment in this case. And we've got our VAT rate specified as well. Now, if we did need to split this amount against maybe a number of different ledger accounts, maybe it's not just for office equipment, or maybe that payment we made, some of the items in that payment are classed as standard rated, some are classed as being exempt or zero rated, then we can split the transaction. We can click this little sort of fork icon. And that means we can get into this area where we can start breaking it down. So we could adjust the value against that first line and then start adding in different ledger accounts. Now I'm going to cancel that split. I'm just going to do the one and I'll click create. And again, that transaction disappears. So that's the create option. The transfer option is essentially for posting bank transfers. So in this case, let's say this transaction here, £333.33 going out of our current account. We're going to say it's for going to our credit card, so our MasterCard in this case, and we'll just leave the reference set as Santander 123. And it's a transfer. We just click transfer and that's it done. So that's the three options that you've got for processing your transactions. Excuse me. Now, if you need to set up rules, and the more rules you have, the slicker that process is going to be. Now, rules are used for things like, let's see if I can find an obvious one. It's always the case when you're trying to explain it that you can't find one on the list with a decent reference. Right, let's just take this one as an example, this HSBC. Now, let's say we were processing that manually as a bank transfer. And it could be anything, this. It could be money coming in or going out. But if you've got something that's consistent, so let's say if it was bank charges, or it might be the name of your bank that you're transferring to, it might be the name of your utilities company, it might be things like insurance where the amount might change, but it's probably going to have the same reference each and every month. So if you've got something consistent about that transaction, whether it's just the reference or the amount or both, then you could set up a rule. So if we just take this one as an example, we can click Create Rule. We can pop in the name. Let's just say credit card. Helps if you can type. It's a payment. It knows it's money going out. And in this case, it's got the reference HSBC. So it knows that, and it knows the amount in this instance as well. So if we were to leave those conditions as they are, it means that as our transactions download, if the transaction is a payment and it has the reference, in this case HSBC, and it's for £50, then we can specify what we want it to do. We want it to post a transfer. We want to transfer it to this account and leave the reference as that. Just depends on the type of transaction, which boxes you'd be asked to complete. But obviously, if it was things like bank charges, for instance, or maybe a minimum payment that's taken by direct debit each month, then this value is going to change. So in that sort of instance, we wouldn't want to have two payments or two conditions set up. Otherwise, it would have to meet both conditions for the software to be able to process it. So in this instance, what you would do is you would just knock that one off and just maybe base it around the reference only. So as the transaction downloads, if it recognizes, in this case, it has the reference HSBC and it's a payment, still got that option, then it will know what to do with that. So it will automatically post that as a transfer. We could just save that one. And obviously, if that was to download in the future, it's recognized, the software just processes it automatically. So the more rules you set up, the better. If you've got customers that always pay you online, it's repetitive customers as well, then you could always ask them, right, set up a rule maybe based around their account reference. Say, right, when you pay me online, you need to quote your account reference. But the more you have set up, the slicker it's going to be. So just in case if you're working through those, and that obviously that saves you having to log into your online banking each and every morning. Right, we'll pop back to the slides. A few very specific questions coming through. I'll try and pick those up a little bit later on, those ones. But for now, we'll just pop back to the slides. We'll move on with bank reconciliation. Now, if you're using a bank feed, as your transactions are processed, so as they download and you process those incoming bank transactions, they'll automatically be marked as reconciled. But if you choose not to use a bank feed, or maybe you don't have one available, maybe your bank or your credit card isn't supported currently, then you can use the manual reconciliation process. And the manual reconciliation process, historically, it's something that you would have done on a monthly basis. You would have got your bank statement, and then it's just a case of comparing those transactions to the transactions that you've entered into your accounts. Obviously, these days, with people having online banking, much easier probably to do it on a much more regular basis. Some people even do that again, what I was saying, it might be the first task that you complete every morning. But the idea of doing this helps you to identify missing transactions, maybe where you've typed something incorrectly. Maybe you've entered a payment when it should have been a receipt, or vice versa. Or maybe it was just a typo. You've typed in the pence the wrong way around, that type of thing. So by reconciling and comparing what you've entered in your accounts to those that have appeared on your bank statement, it just means that your accounts are kept up to date and it's accurate. But let's have a look at the basic process. It's quite a simple process, really just a case of, I suppose to a certain extent, it's a ticking exercise, ticking off the transactions that have appeared on your bank statement. So let's quickly have a look at that process. Right, so we'll close out of that bank feed. Still within banking. This time we're going to go into the MasterCard account that I've got set up. And you've got your link to connect to a bank feed in here as well if you've got one available. But to access the manual reconciliation process, just from the drop down, it's reconcile. Now, when you first come in, you'll need to complete this area at the top here. So you enter the date that you're reconciling up to. So as you can see, you can change that date, and you can, obviously, if you're playing catch up, you've got various statements in front of you, you can start backdating that if required. I'll just leave it set with today's date. You then pop in your statement end balance. So the balance that you're trying to agree to once you select all these transactions. You can pop in a reference. Now, if you've got a paper statement, that might be, probably chances are you're going to have some sort of statement number on that one. Alternatively, it might be the name of your account. And you put some sort of date reference in there. It's entirely up to you what you want to pop in there. We just click apply, and then we can start matching our transactions. Now, before you do start matching your transactions, what we always recommend is that you come down and you check this starting balance. So does that starting balance agree with the opening balance on your bank statement? If it does, then you're good to go. You start ticking off your transactions. If it doesn't, and you can sometimes find that when you first start reconciling, maybe you've never done one before, so you just need to get it sort of aligned, as it were, the information within your bank, in your accounts with that on your bank statement. You need a little bit of advice on that one. Obviously, our support team is there to assist you. But you'll find information about reconciling as well within our help centre. But assuming this figure is correct, it agrees with the opening balance on your bank statement, we can then start ticking off the transactions. So let's say our first transaction is this one, the first one on our bank statement. It's this one here. All you're doing is you're ticking it. So we've got a payment for some petrol. It's for £50. It agrees with what's on the bank statement. What I would always recommend you do is when you select the transaction, check this figure here, that running balance. Does it agree with the information or the running balance on your bank statement? If it does, what you've done is fine. Move on to the next one. If it doesn't, then you've just identified something that's essentially incorrect. So that £50, have I entered that as a receipt rather than a payment, just in error? So if I had, and it was in this sort of, you're looking and you're thinking, well, it's for petrol, it's £50, but actually you've entered it the wrong way around. You entered it as a receipt rather than a payment. Then when you select that transaction, obviously that reconcile balance, the running balance, is going to adjust in the wrong direction. So if it agrees, that's fine. Move on to the next one. So it's then just a case of selecting your transaction as per the bank statement, check that running balance, move on to the next one. So what we'll do, we'll select those ones. This one I'm just going to leave. That's the one that I just processed via the bank feed a moment ago. I'll just leave that one, say that one hasn't cleared my bank yet. And chances are for yourselves, even if you're doing it right up to date, you're probably going to have transactions that haven't cleared your bank. That's fine. They'll just come on to hopefully appear on the next time you reconcile. But at this stage, we've selected our transactions. The starting balance agreed, the target balance, this figure is the figure that we entered at the top a moment ago. So this was our target balance, the balance that we're trying to agree to. And then you've got your, obviously, reconcile balance. So as we've been selecting our transactions, this figure will be updating. If we just deselect that one, you'll see this adjusts. And when you think you've finished, these two figures should agree. And if they do agree, you'll have a difference of 0. You can then at that point just click finish. It'll flag your transactions as being reconciled, and that's essentially the process complete. Now, we only selected a handful of transactions there. Yours might include hundreds of transactions, so it may take you a little bit longer. But once you've gone through that process, it's very easy to then obviously continue with that. Once you've gone through it a couple of times, it looks pretty daunting when if you first look at it. But once you've gone through it a couple of times, nice and straightforward. Lindsay, you're just mentioning there, if you pay several checks or cash from customers in one go into a bank, how would you match these transactions? So would you have to create new transactions every time a customer paid for something? Or do you just pay it in sort of, so essentially, are you having just one transaction, or are you having it grouped together, as it were? A couple of different techniques for that one, Lindsay. So if you're talking about with regard to reconciling it, then yes, you could show them individually, or you could do more of a daily takings, as it were. Now, what is quite common is that in the banking area, just branching off topic for a moment, is that it's quite common to sort of create a new record, call it something like, say, till account. And all your daily takings, if you want to record individual transactions, you just pay it into that daily takings account rather than the current account. And then at the end of the day, whatever you pay into your bank, it would just be a case of making a transfer from, say, your till account across to your current account for whatever's paid into your bank as one lump. Again, if you need to discuss anything like that, your specific situation, get in touch with our support team and they'll discuss that with you, give you a bit of advice. Right, let's move on. And we're going to pick up on analysis types next. Now, analysis types is quite a straightforward option. There's a couple of things that catch people out. So we'll just explain those just so that you don't fall into that category yourself. But it gives you that extra sort of extra filter, I suppose, for reporting purposes. You don't have to use it for reporting purposes, but it gives you that extra level of analysis should you need it. Now, there are two analysis sort of broad categories. You can analyze your transactions and you can analyze your records, or group analysis in this instance. So transaction analysis will help you break down your transactions so that you can then report on that. So you might do it by department, by project, or whichever other way you want to record and analyze your transactions. Group analysis is a way of flagging your, like say, your customers, your suppliers, or your products and services. And it's then, when you come to run your reports, easy to filter those. So it means that potentially, rather than just a standard profit and loss, you could run one based around a department or one based around a project, for instance. So you could check your project profitability. Let's have a look at it though, and we'll see, just explain the basics of accessing and setting up your analysis options. And then we'll have a look at also how it impacts on reports as well. So to access this, we're going to go into settings. And in the financial settings area, we've got the analysis types. Let's give it a click. So we've got the two analysis sections, transaction analysis and group analysis. And both setup-wise pretty much work in exactly the same way. Now for transaction analysis, you've got these three categories. So by default, you've got descriptions already entered. They'll be called department, cost center, project. You can rename them to something completely different if you want to. It's entirely up to yourself. Often if they didn't have default descriptions, we get people contacting us saying, well, what should I use them for? Much better to give people an idea of how they might use them. And we actually get less calls as a result of that. But these are by far the three most common uses for analyzing your transactions: department, cost center, and project. If you need to rename one and use it for something completely different, then just a case of clicking on the little pencil icon and it will let you change that. But we'll just leave them as they are. Now for departments, you can see I've got, all we need to do is set up a code and a name for each department that we want to set up and allocate transactions to. It's just a case of keep adding onto the list. You could use a code and then a name, or as we've done at the bottom one, we just use the same thing in both the code and the name column. Entirely up to yourself what you want to use for that one. And again, it will just keep on going. So you're not restricted to 6 options, for instance. Just as you add another one in, it will give you a blank one on the end. One thing that might catch you out, it's a very simple option, is this active areas. So what you're seeing here is for departments, we've got these 5 departments set up. I want the department option to be available to me when I'm entering these types of transactions. So in this instance, I've enabled sales invoices and credit notes. I've purposely removed the option for purchases for invoices and credit notes, just so we can demonstrate that one in a moment. And then we have enabled bank payments and receipts as well. Now, if we just save this for a moment and we pop into banking first of all, and we'll just choose new and then payment. Now, if I choose other payment and we just choose a bank account, pop in a value, and you can see when it comes to entering the details of the transaction, so we'll just quickly specify a ledger account. Pop in some details, and you can see we've got the transaction analysis columns in this case. So these are the ones that have been flagged to be active for this type of transaction. So for department, I can click on the drop down and I can select one from that list. Otherwise I can just leave them set to none. So that one's quite obvious how you go about selecting a department or a cost center or a project when you're entering those transactions. If we go into sales and choose an invoice, choose new invoice, choose a customer, and we'll just choose a service from the list. Now this time, even though we've flagged that the department option to be active for this type of transaction, we don't get a column for it. So instead, we get this double chevron on the end of the line. And that's, if we click that, we then get the analysis options that are flagged as being active for this type of transaction. So again, we can easily select that if we want to specify a department. We then just quickly save it. And again, that's it done. If we went into purchases and then purchase invoices, choose new invoice, quickly choose a supplier. This time on the double chevron, we don't get the department option. We don't get that department option because the department option isn't flagged to be active in this type of transaction. So watch out for that. If we go back into settings, back to analysis types, we'll just quickly have a quick look at group analysis. Now for group analysis, again, you've got default descriptions. You've got three broad categories. You've got customer group, supplier group, product group. You can rename them and use them for something completely different if you want to. But they're a way of potentially analyzing your customer records, your supplier records, or your product and service records. So you could even, if you wanted to, use all three of these for customers only. It might just be a way of recording extra information against your customer to categorize them. But in this case, we've used them for reporting purposes. So for the customer group, I've got two set up. I've got construction sector and I've got private set up. And I've only got this one flagged to be active in the customers area. That means that I can flag my customers accordingly. So what it means is when I come to the likes of reporting, for instance, I can go into my likes of an age debtors as an example. And rather than just have a great big list of all of my customers and what's outstanding, I can start filtering the list. So I can say, right, from the customer group, I want to display the customer records that are flagged as being in the construction sector only, and it will narrow that list down. So maybe rather than me send the information to the likes of Excel and then start stripping out information, I can do that in advance within the software itself. So it just depends what you want to use those for. You might have within your group analysis options, you might have almost like an account handler. So which one of your members of staff looks after and deals with a particular customer or supplier. If you have a, say, purchasing department who looks after a particular supplier, you could set those employees up as one of the group analysis options rather than saying supplier group. Maybe call it, put employees' names in. And then when they come to run reports, again, they could filter the lists accordingly. So it's a very simple feature, but very effective. And it means, again, that you could run things like, just as an example, if we go back to reporting, if we went into profit and loss as an example, we can click on more, choose the analysis type that we're after. So let's say a department, and then it would give us that list. So I choose the relevant department, click calculate, and essentially I've then got a department profit and loss report. But that could have been by any of the analysis options. If you want, and obviously if you've got projects set up, again, let's choose a specific project, click calculate, and again, it will narrow that down for me. So if you want to check the likes of project profitability, that's how you do it. Right, okay, let's go back to the slides and we're going to move on. Again, any questions? Well, I think maybe going a little bit off track just at the moment. I'll pick those up at the end of the session. If you can hang on for those, we'll try and cover as many as we can. But we're going to move on and we're going to have a look at correcting transactions at this stage. Now, we all make mistakes, whether we admit it or not, but we all do. Whether you're in the office and it's a busy environment, phones going, under normal circumstances, maybe people coming into the office as well. You might be working at home though. You might have pets barking in the background, or young children running around, or doorbell going, phone ringing all the time, you name it. You can all get distracted. And it's very easy to just get distracted. And because of that, you just lost concentration. You've quickly saved something, and then you've maybe forgot to change like a date or something of that nature. So very easy to correct your transactions in Sage Business Cloud. Now you've got two options when it comes to correcting transactions. You can amend them individually, so one at a time. Or you can actually make corrections in bulk. Now, you are restricted as to what you can correct when you amend transactions in bulk, but there is a correct transactions option available in the software. That means that you can correct up to 1,000 transactions at a time. Now, I've never tested this personally, but I am reassured by our development team that that is the case, up to 1,000 transactions at a time, which is great if you're just starting to use the analysis types option as well, because that's one of the areas that where you can amend the transactions. So rather than go through individually and say, right, this one I want to allocate to this department, we can use the correct transactions option to amend them in bulk. So if you're partway through a year and you think, right, yeah, I'm going to start using analysis options, it's a good option for that. But let's have a look at it. So I'll just quickly share my screen. So back to my desktop. Now, just to set the scene a little bit, so what we'll do is we'll pop into banking. I'll just click new payment. We'll just use other payment because it's a little bit quicker. Choose our bank account. Now I'm going to purposely put a typo in there before you start thinking, he spelled that wrong. So a bit of a typo in there. Let's put £60 in there. I'll leave the ledger account as is. I'll put the right details in this time though. I'll ignore department as well at this stage, and we'll just accept those details. So we've entered that transaction. Now, when we spot that mistake, so let's say we're in our current account and we think, right, we're looking at the transactions. So it should be at the bottom. Here it is. Now, if you're like me and you spot a typo and you think, I've got to change that, all you need to do is you just click on it. So we give it a click, it'll take me back into that entry screen and I can start making whatever changes I want at that point. So if I forgot to change the date, I can do that. I can correct that typo. I might even put someone's initials on the end, so I'll put mine on the end. I put it to the wrong ledger account. And anything else for that matter that I need to change. Could even be that I should have split the transaction. So I can do that. I could always come in now and use this option to attach an image. Maybe I didn't have a copy of the receipt at the time. It's one of my colleagues, just give me the basic details, but they've now found that receipt, sent me a scanned copy of it or a photograph. And then we can easily correct that. So you make any changes, just click save. And that's it done. So very easy to correct that transaction. A few people are saying they've got a delay in the screens changing there. So what I'll quickly do, I'll just run through that one again. I think, can you just confirm if that has updated? Sorry about that. Right, I'm not sure if that's a problem at my end or, right, let's just make sure. We'll quickly run through that one again. So back into banking, we'll just choose new and then payment. I'll quickly do that one again. So I'll ignore the supplier. We'll choose current account. So we'll use a different value this time just so we can identify it, or I can identify it anyway. So I'll quickly fill that in. And what we'll do is we'll quickly save that transaction. So that's it saved. So we've entered that transaction, we got distracted, we've just saved it. It's got some of the right details on, but some of it isn't. So we just posted it against this current account. So when we spot that transaction, so let's say we're looking at the transactions, we spot it, we can see the transaction on the list, just give it a click. And then we can back into that entry screen and we can start correcting that one. So if we need to change the date, we can do that one. We can correct the typo as well that I purposely put in there. We could even change the amount if we needed to. Ledger account. and we can also correct any of the details as well. And as I was just mentioning there, when the screen seemed to freeze, we can, if we need to, we can break it down. Even when we go back in, we can break that down, maybe adjust that value and put some of it to a different ledger account. And also, what we were mentioning just before when the screen did freeze, we've got that little paperclip icon as well. So if we now got maybe we've now been sent a photograph of that receipt, or we got a scanned copy of the document, or whatever else you want to attach for that matter, you can just give it a click and browse for that and attach it. Other than that, we just save it. And again, that's it done. Now, you will be restricted if your transaction has been VAT reconciled. So if you've included it on a VAT return, it will essentially almost like lock the transaction down. Now, if you're in that position, chances are you're going to need to do some sort of manual correction at that point, but you should find information about that within the Help Center itself. So that's editing your transactions individually. If you need to correct your transactions in bulk, you've got via the adjustments menu, you've got the correct transactions option. All we do is in this section is we click make correction, and then we basically need to use some conditions to try and identify the transactions that we want to amend. So we can base it around a number of different fields. So maybe we're trying to identify all transactions that aren't allocated to a department. So we could just do that. Click search, and it will identify them for me. So you can base your conditions based on these fields to basically try and narrow down and identify those transactions. It might be one of your colleagues that are always posting transactions to an incorrect ledger account. So you can use this option to correct that type of thing. Now, we mentioned when I was on the slide a few minutes ago that you can correct up to 1,000 transactions at a time. Now, it could be that you just want to select all the transactions that you've identified, in which case you can tick the box here, or you can literally go down and make your selection. It's just a case of going through those transactions and ticking them. Once you've made your selection, we click next, and then we get prompted, what is it you want to change? So for transactions, we can amend the ledger account, and we can amend the analysis fields. So let's say we want to allocate those transactions that we just selected to, let's say, our sales department. I can pop in a reason for that as well, if required. I'm not going to in this case. It will show me the transactions that we have selected, and all I need to do at that point, click review, click update. You get the little wheel whirling around just while it updates all of those transactions for you, and then that will be it done. So we just click done at the bottom, and that's the correction complete. So two options, correcting your transactions individually or correcting them in bulk. Really easy to do it whichever sort of scenario you're in. Right, let's see if we can get the screens to work properly. So I'll just pop back to the slides. The second last area that we're going to cover this morning is reporting. Now, you might be pleased here. I'm not going to sit here and go through all of the reports and say, right, this is what a profit and loss report is. This is a balance sheet. This is a trial balance. And this is how it calculates. I would encourage you to have a go over the reports. See what's available. Preview them or export them or even print them out. See what information is included. You'll find information about the reports, again, in the Help Center. So loads of reports available. You've got a comprehensive list, including a full suite of management reports, as well as you'd expect from your accounting software. So what we'll do is we'll just take a quick look at the reports list, give you an idea of what's available. Now, if you did attend the intro session, you will already be aware, and you might be aware of it anyway, but there are different levels of Sage Business Cloud. So there's Accounting Start, Accounting Standard, and also Accounting Plus. And the reports that you have available will vary depending on which level of the software you're actually on. If we pop into reporting, so I just click reporting on the list so that I get the full list of reports. So here we have your essential reports, so things like your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your trial balance, age debtors, age creditors. You've got things like your nominal activity reports, your audit trail report. Maybe you want a list of transactions that have been entered between us on certain dates. You can do that. Chart of accounts, if you need a list of your nominal codes, your ledger accounts that are set up and how they're flagged, etc. That's a good report to have as well. You've got cash flow or cash-based reports. What else we got? Products and services. If you've enabled the construction industry scheme, you've got various reports available, depending whether you flagged yourself as a contractor, a subcontractor, or both. So have a go of these reports, see what's available. One thing we often get asked about is just how do I print a report, because you can't see a print option on screen. So if you were just to generate a report, let's just click on nominal activity as an example. It will generate the report for me. And then when I export it, so just click yes to that. If you want to print your report, then you need to export it as a PDF. CSV is used for transferring your information maybe across to the likes of Excel, for instance. So maybe you want to do further analysis and break it down, etc., and do your own calculations based on the information in the report. But if you need to print it, or you just want to download it, choose the PDF option. You get a little wheel whirling at the top while it generates that report. And when it's ready, just right on cue there, you'll get that little sort of orange circle indicating the report is ready for you to view. So just from the drop down, we'll select it. It'll preview the PDF copy for us. Obviously we can download that if we need to, but that's where you'll find the print option as well towards the upper right corner. But have a go over the reports. I can't stress that one enough. You're not going to do any harm by running reports in your software and seeing what's available. Sometimes you find people are scared to run them. Have a go over them. If you don't understand something, maybe you can't follow the information in the help center, or you need a bit more advice on a particular report, then get in touch with our support team. Loads of support options as well. Again, I'll explain more about those support options in a few minutes' time. David, you're just asking there, can you use stock levels to generate a purchase invoice? Are you wanting to generate like almost like a shortfall? That kind of report isn't available. So it's not going to generate that automatically for you. You would need to choose which options you want to include on the purchase invoice. And again, it's not going to feed through from the sales side either. So if you generated a quote and then say that's accepted, it's then not going to generate say a purchase order based on the stock that you would need to complete that quote. That would need to be entered manually. I'm assuming that that's the type of thing that you're after. Right, let's go back to our slides for a moment. We're going to cover the final area. Remember, I am going to hang around for questions at the end of this session as well, but we're going to pick up on our final sort of demonstration area this morning, which is the VAT return. Now, the VAT return has always been I suppose a strong point within any level of Sage software. Everyone always thinks the VAT return is going to be really complex to produce, and it really isn't. Actually, generating your VAT return, it's quite a simple process. A lot of people get unnerved about it, thinking it's going to be complicated, and it really isn't. I've got a little video that I'm going to share with you in just a moment so you can see what not only generating the VAT return looks like, but also what a submission looks like as well. Really easy to submit your VAT returns online to HMRC. Nothing complicated about it. Now, when you calculate your VAT return, it's going to calculate automatically. So it's going to be based around your date range, your VAT scheme, and of course, the transactions that you've entered. So based on that, it will generate an accurate VAT return for you. Now, last year, HMRC introduced Making Tax Digital. So that went live on the 1st of April of last year. And with the introduction of Making Tax Digital, there were a number of requirements, and a couple of different phrases started being bandied around as well. First one is authenticating your software or authenticating your account, which sounds a lot more complex than it is. Authenticating your account as far as Sage Business Cloud is concerned just means switching on the MTD option. When you switch it on, it'll link to HMRC and get you to log into your HMRC account. And by doing that, you're essentially authenticating. You're setting up that link between your accounting software and your HMRC account. You've authenticated at that point. But MTD, when it was introduced, it introduced a number of requirements. One is that you needed to keep and maintain digital VAT records. So as long as you're using Sage Business Cloud Accounting, then you've got that one covered. You're fully compliant for MTD purposes. And obviously the other requirement is that you have to submit your VAT return online. You can no longer manually log into your VAT account and make a manual submission. You've got to do it via your software, which is really easy to do via your software. So we'll see that in just a moment. Now, if you haven't authenticated yet, so maybe you've just registered for MTD, then really easy to do that. So I'll just share my screen very quickly just to point you in the right direction for that one. So to authenticate, you just go into settings, and then in the financial settings area, we've got accounting dates and VAT. So we just pop into that area and you scroll down to the bottom and you've got this authenticate option. So you click it, it'll branch off to HMRC's website and get you to sign in. And at that point, you'll have authenticated. So you've switched on MTD within your software. As far as generating your VAT return is concerned, what I will do at this point, I'm just going to play a little video for you. So this is a little video I've used for quite some time now. So to demonstrate what the process looks like when you generate your VAT return, but also when you make that submission. It's a lot easier than you think it would be. So to generate a VAT return, you click your reporting option, go into VAT returns, and then you'll click create VAT return. I'm just going to pause the video for a moment at that point because this message pops up contacting HMRC. Now the reason for contacting HMRC is because you've authenticated. So what it does, the software links to your VAT account and it will pull back. It will be informed by HMRC when your next VAT return, what period it should cover. So you don't even need to specify that. It pulls that back from your HMRC account. All you need to do at that point is click calculate. Now, based on your VAT scheme, the date range, and obviously the transactions that you've entered, it will show you the figures that have been calculated. So it's a really quick process to actually generate a return. Even if you just wanted to check your figures, you can come in and do that. You can obviously print your VAT return, so boxes 1 to 9 in this instance. And obviously your detailed report is available as well. So you want more of a breakdown of the transaction information that's included in your VAT return, you've got that one available. Now let's say you agree with your figures and you're ready to sort of make your submission. All we would need to do, if you agree with your figures, is you have an option on the right there, submit online to HMRC. Now we could just save the return and submit it later and come back to it, but let's say we want to submit that online. So you select that option, submit online to HMRC. You then click save, and you'll be prompted at that point, finalize and submit. So basically a message saying, are you sure you want to do this? Just giving you that chance to back out should you need to. So if you've just clicked that option in error. If we do want to make the submission, we click finalize and submit. And that's it done. It literally can be as quick as that. So we've got our submission date and time on there. The VAT return is saved on the list. So we can always go in and view that again should we need to, but that's the submission complete. So it's not a complex process actually submitting the VAT return. A couple of clicks and it's done. Really couldn't be easier. Right, let's head back to our slides. Now, it does bring us to the end of what we'd planned to cover in the session this morning. Just want to quickly mention a little bit about the additional support should you need it. So we mentioned quite a few different areas we've covered in this session this morning. So if you do need any assistance, just remember there's loads of additional support available. Whatever screen you're on, next to the title, you've got that little question mark icon. You'll have heard me talk quite a bit about that one in the intro session if you've attended one of those. It'll just bring up the help relating to the screen that you're looking at. You've got the Help Center link, top right-hand corner, where you can search through the Help Center for advice on whatever it is you're after, whether it's entering transactions or corrections or generating your VAT return, or even just setting up basic records and entering your opening balances maybe. Loads of help in there. Beyond that though, within the Help Center, if you scroll right down to the bottom, you've got that Get in Touch option. And it will give you a list of the options that you've got available for getting in touch with our support team. Now, the recommended option, some of you may have used this already, is our Q&A live service. It's the recommended option because it's the quickest way for you to get in contact with our support team. You literally click the link, it'll prompt you to enter your name and your email address, and then you'll join the session. Now, if you're on the webinar today, our Q&A live service uses exactly the same platform as what I'm using for hosting the webinars on. So you'll be able to join one of those sessions. And the idea is you join the session and literally via the questions panel, you type in your question. We've got a team of support technicians sat there monitoring that. Generally, the sessions run Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So you would expect for Sage Business Cloud to get answers to your questions, any that you have, probably within about a minute. If you think of any questions after you've left the session today, or maybe I don't get a chance to answer your specific question, then please do try the Q&A service. Give it a try. But you've got other options as well, whether you want to use online chat or maybe you prefer just picking up the phone to speak to someone. Maybe you've got a really complex query, then you can always pick up the phone and speak to someone. So loads of support options there for you. If you haven't had a chance to attend our introduction webinar yet, might be beneficial for your colleagues as well, then we run those on a regular basis as well. If you're looking for the registration link, just wait for your follow-up email. You get that in around about an hour's time. It will include the link that you need, or simply visit sage.co.uk/webinars. And there you can access the registration pages or view the recordings that we have available. So if you can't attend at a specific time, then you've always got the recordings available. We cover the very basics of getting up and running with your software, setting up contact records, products and services, basic invoicing, banking, a number of different options. So if you are interested, just head along to sage.co.uk/webinars. Now that does bring me to the end. I'll try to pick up some questions in just a moment, but I want to thank you for your time first of all. Really appreciate you coming along this morning, or if you are watching a recording, I hope you have enjoyed that as well. Remember the support options. If you think of questions after you've left the webinar, do get in touch. We've explained the support options and how you go about accessing them, so please use them. You don't need to struggle with anything within your software. If you're not sure, we're here to help. But many thanks for your time. I hope you found it helpful this morning, giving you a bit more insight into some of those what we term more advanced features that you're not likely to use when you first start using the software, but you're probably likely to come onto them very, very quickly. So part 2 of our Fast Start series. If you need a bit of a recap, please do get yourself registered again or watch the recording. But I am going to hang around for just a few minutes just to try and answer some of the questions that I've been inundated with. If I don't get a chance to answer your question, then please get in touch with our Q&A service. If anyone needs to close out the webinar, literally just click the cross top right hand corner and that will close you out. Right, okay, let's have a look at what we've got. So Lindsay, you mentioned there, is there a webinar on the payroll, Sage Business Cloud payroll? Not just yet. We are currently developing those. So we'd expect those to probably start in January. You'll be able to get yourself signed up. And again, we cover that one in detail. I think, again, probably 2 sessions on those. So you'll be able to get yourself signed up. Again, if you need to look for those, just head along to sage.co.uk/webinars. That's where you'll find the registration pages. Let's see what else we've got as well. I think we dealt with David's chunk of questions a little bit earlier. David, you do mention as well, sorry, one of your earlier questions as well. Let me just bring up my screen. Let's get rid of that video. We'll go back into invoices. So David's question is just the product column and the description column show the same info. Are we on about this? David, just are we on about this specific these specific columns, this product column? Yeah, so you basically your product service in your description column, it's whatever you've got set up. So in my case, there will be they are a little bit different. It just depends what you've got set up within your products and services. So if we just go into our products and services list, it just depends what you've set up. So codes are a lot more flexible, I suppose, on Sage Business Cloud. I know another software I've used, it's much more stringent. It might be purely numeric, a code that you might use, but you can really use whatever you want in Sage Business Cloud, so you've got that flexibility. Some people do type exactly the same thing in both columns, and in which case, yes, when you get to the likes of, if you're producing a product invoice, it's then going to show your code and your description as being exactly the same thing. But that's what that refers to. So if I, just as an example, you mentioned there you've got code 1234. So if I do 1234, and I'll just go up, let's put up my product description. Let's see if I can spell that right today. Oops, I can't even spell product either. And I'll just pop a price on there. And I'll just save that. So when I go into sales and then invoice, new invoice, sorry, I see what you mean, yeah. Actually, you'll see a little bit different there, isn't it? I'll have a look at that one for you, David, and I'll drop you an email. If you could just drop me an email, David, just reply to any of your webinar emails. They will be directed back to myself. I'll look at that one. There may be a setting for that one, I'm not sure. But I'll get back to you to just, obviously I'll check with one of our internal support teams, see what they advise, and I'll get back to you on that one. Right, I think that's from what I can see, that's the majority of the questions I've answered there. So any others, if I haven't had a chance to answer that question for you, then please get in touch with our support team and we'll take it from that point. So once again, I'm just going to pop back to that very final slide. Once again, many thanks for your time this morning. You know where we are if you do need any support. And again, watch out for your follow-up email. And if you get a chance, do complete the survey. That should pop up as you leave the session this morning. Many thanks, and hopefully we'll see you again.